Hey everybody, my name is Jennifer. This is Metatron speaking. Today's video is going to be talking about a new guide that I have. It's going to be talking a little bit about light language. It's going to be talking about a past lifetime that I have on a brand new planet that I just saw recently. If you are new to this channel, I channel many different beings, archangels, ascended masters, gods and goddesses. Um, it's called Metatron is speaking because initially Metatron was really the only one I was channeling. Now he directs me more to different guides for different purposes. But he is still definitely, he's like my manager. He's still kind of organizing everything for me. He says yes. Um, which reminds me, if you haven't seen this channel before, my shoulders do move quite frequently. Metatron is lined up within my energetic body. So if he wants to say yes, you'll see a movement like on my right shoulder a lot of times. Or if he says no, you'll see movement on my left shoulder a lot of times. And then you'll see me stare off to like obtain clairvoyant information, although I might not do that as much during this video because really I have a bunch of notes on my phone that I want to go over with you guys. Um, so this all kind of started when if you if you know, there we have a Patreon group. Um, so Susan and I, my business partner, we have a Patreon group. The Patreon group is through Orange Light Energy, which is our business name. The group is called Lightworker Tribe, or that's like the membership name once you get in there. And for that group, we're working with a lot of different guides, and they have brought forward different things for us to work with. They've brought forward symbols for us to work with. They've also brought forward some light language recently. And so I was given this light language, and it wasn't very long. It was like, I don't know, I don't remember. It might have been like 7 or 8 words long. And the way it comes through is I hear it and then I write it down in English in a way that I'm basically kind of phonetically writing it down, hoping that the way I'm writing it down is the way people will know to speak it to get those correct sounds. Um, and one of the words that I was given was na, N-A. And this piqued my curiosity because I had to ask Metatron to verify, but na is part of the word Gana, or actually Gana is actually 2 words technically. Gana. And Gana is the blueprinter planet or the first planet ever made. And so for them to use the word na in this language, I was asking Metatron, hey, is this the same na that's in Gana? And he was like, yes. Um, and so Gana, I knew when they gave me the name that this was an original language, that they were giving me this planet's name in. And they also told me that there were many, many translations for Ghana, but they gave me two of them. They translated it as love of light, and they also translated it as forever dream. So I was like, okay. And I was very excited about that at the time that I got it. Um, and so I was like, ooh, so the word na, I was trying to figure out in the sentence they gave us, okay, does it mean love? Does it mean light? Does it, like, which translation is it? You know? And so I wanted to start translating the light language that they gave me into English words. I wanted to like start decoding it, you know? So there was like a way to learn this language, right? And so I have this new guide who just came forward. His name is Talman. I'll tell you how he looks in a second, but he's the one who is speaking this light language to me. And so he was showing me, he's like, you want to directly translate word for word. And he's like, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't, it won't work. He said, even if they gave me hundreds of English words to explain the concepts of this original light language, he's like, it wouldn't be complete. The sounds are concepts or ideas that are formed from higher dimensional knowledge. And so it's really crazy because they will show me things in my clairvoyance that there are no words for. And so it's hard to explain, but they were showing me energy moving. And even though my human mind doesn't know what they're showing me, my soul would recognize it. And so, like, my soul was understanding something, even though my brain was like, okay, that's interesting. They're just showing me some energy moving. That's the best way I can explain it. Um, so essentially, all of us have these blocks somewhere in our higher chakras, really. Somewhere up in our higher chakras, we have purposeful blocks that are filtering out a lot of this higher vibrational information because really we're just not ready for it. It's just like not the right time on earth for us to understand these things. And so we'll be shown the answer. Like they'll show, they show me the answer and it's still not registering the way that it should be able to register. I can feel that there's like a screen there. It's like, okay, make sure she can't understand this yet. So Talman is talking to me in like thoughts. His telepathy is like so good. It's hard to explain because a lot of telepathy, like if I'm talking to like a fifth dimensional being, like if I'm talking to like an Arcturian, when they use telepathy, it kind of it sounds like words in your head or you just hear it as thoughts, but it feels like they're here. I know that's hard to explain. It feels like they're here when they're saying these things. Talman's telepathy, I could see it as like these really super fine particles of energy that he kind of just merges his energy with mine, and I can't really perceive him at all. It's like it's more because it's higher vibrational, it's almost like we are one. It's like you can't tell the difference between this being and that being. Um, so it's just like this again, I'm doing my best to explain things to you that have no proper way of explaining. Um, so what did I say? His telepathy is of such a high quality that I cannot sense it. It is like fine particles that seep into my mind undetected. He lets me, like, he allows me to know that he is there, but if he didn't make the effort to be like, hey, I'm here and I'm channeling with you, I would just be like, oh, I'm just so philosophical today. Or I'd be like, huh, I wonder who I'm channeling. I don't really know who. Like, because it's like, he is me. I know. And that's how it is. The higher up you go, that's more of the feeling that comes across. When Talman speaks, he has this really deep, really rumbling kind of voice. His cadence or the pace that he speaks is slow, and a lot of times his the last syllable in a word, he holds on to it. And it's almost like he is, I mean, it's not like he's singing, but it's almost like he's singing instead of talking. There's this rhythmic quality to it. And what I wrote down was that he speaks slowly, he speaks deeply, and it's so slow and deep that it feels like the words are creating mountains. And so what that is referencing is he is speaking light language. Light language is designed to create. And so literally, if he was speaking the right words, it would create mountains. A few times I've heard creator. And so this is sort of different, to be honest, but I'm making a connection because I'm making like the musical connection. So a couple times I've heard creator, like they took me up, I don't know where I was, but they took me up to a higher realm. They're still not telling me where I was. Um, and I heard creator, and creator was, I couldn't see them or anything like that, but I could hear them, and they were radiating or emanating a like musical notes, and it was a very short piece of music, and it was on repeat, and it was very familiar, and it was very comforting. And it's almost just like that was his default setting. This is the default setting. I just radiate this all the time. But anyways, just wanted to bring that up because when I heard him, it's two different times that I heard him, and it was the same song both times, and I was fascinated both times. Let's see. Yeah, so light codes or light language are the same thing, really. Light language is, of course, verbal, it's singing or it's speaking. Light codes are w- given, I would say always, yeah, thank you. We're going to say they're always given out the palm chakra, and they're the same information in a slightly different format. They can have yes, they can have the exact same purpose. Um, the light language, though, is just really hits something, I think, within a lot of us because there's this soul level familiarity when we hear these things. Um, so I was kind of having like a oh my gosh moment because they had given me light language for the Patreon group, and I was just recognizing the power of what they had given me, especially since I could hear my guide say it, and my guide was saying it like the way it was supposed to be said. It's harder for me to emanate it exactly like they did. Um, but this is how all things are created. This is how planets are created. This is like everything. Everything is done with light language, light codes. This is what, why they say, like, oh, like God spoke things into existence. Yes, he did. It was light language. It's light language. And this is why um, there's a lot of people on Earth right now who are manifestors, who, if I get them as a client, I'm like, start speaking more, start speaking the things that you want and start thinking it, but start speaking it because they can literally speak things into life. And yes, we manifest a lot slower on a 3D planet than 5D or 6D or 7D. Um, but that's a gift. That's So I was having a shocked moment where I was feeling kind of intimidated because I was like, wow, like they gave me some light language, and light language creates things, and this is like it was kind of crazy. I don't know. I was just having a moment where I was like, wow, light language creates planets, and like I have some of this in front of me right now. Not that it was gonna create a planet, because that's not what it was meant to do, but I was just kind of having a like awe moment. So Talman, I want to tell you what he looks like. And it's super hard to describe, but I'm gonna do my best. I actually came across a artistic rendering of an extraterrestrial. Before I met him, I came across this rendering and I was like, that looks familiar. And then of course, now that I've met him, now it makes sense. I'll try to post that somehow, some way onto here. Actually, maybe I can pull it up on my phone. I wonder if you guys could see it. Let me see if I can do that. Now I'm gonna like see if I can search through all my photos for you guys. Wonder if I just nope. I'm gonna have to like manually do this, which is not a fast process. Um, so Talman is really, really tall, really, really lanky. So he stands upright. He's got um, he's got blue skin, even though the picture that I'm looking for is different. I wonder if I'm going to be able to find this. Metatron, help me find this picture. I feel like I must have passed it already. Let me go slower. So he's really tall, really long limbs. His torso is there he is. I wonder if you guys can see this. And I know this is like a horrible photo, but see how he's got like muscles on his torso, like he's a man, even though he's not a man. And he's got those really long things coming off the top of his head. Let me pull up my description because he pretty much looks exactly like that, but let me tell you. And if it looks familiar too, it's because you've seen these guys before as well. Let's see. Keep losing my spot. Sorry, guys. Okay. He's upright, light blue skin. He has muscles on his chest and stomach like a human man. His face has a large vertical hole where his nose would be. His eyes look human. His mouth has a much larger opening than ours, but I didn't see any teeth. Doesn't have body hair. And then the striking feature is really those like tentacle like things that are coming off the back of the head. So there were 7 of them. They were kind of stiff when they were close to the head, and then as they came out, they kind of were more flexible. They stand up from his head, all of these tentacles facing behind him like hair that had been combed back. He radiates a gentle love, and I recognize him as having the same soul as Anne Leon. So Anne Leon, I talked about in maybe 1 or 2 other videos. He is one of my guides, but I've had past lifetimes with him. He looks like a dark-skinned Asian man. He kind of looks like maybe like Thai or Filipino. And I've had lifetimes with him on Lior, which is an Andromedan planet. Anyways, so this is the same soul as him, so it's like super loving. Um, so Talman's race that I showed you the picture of, essentially, they are also part of the Andromedan galaxy, but his planet is named Udon. I wish I could say it the way he said it though. He's like, Udon. Like it's hard to explain, but he's like really deep voice. Um, his race has a connection to volcanic energy. I actually had this race come up as part of a client's session, and so I had channeled information on their race already. So this is what I'm going over with you guys. So they have a connection to volcanic energy. They are showing me active volcanoes on their planet and beautiful ocean water. This race knows how to harness the power of creative energy. Volcanoes create new land, so makes sense. Um, and then, so I was trying to like, like I said before, I don't know, I don't remember if I said it in this video. I think I said it in a different video that I'm very like all business when I'm working with my guides, where I'm like, I want to get stuff done, I want to accomplish things. And so I'm trying to like interview him and ask him questions. And he's just like radiating all this love. And it's distracting. Like I can't focus. I'm just like, oh, I just want to sit with my eyes closed and just hang out with you. Um, but it's the human in us that's like, no, 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 we gotta do. We can't just be. We have to do things, right? The most important thing is the energy radiating from the being, yet the human mind still wants tangible questions answered. Which is funny because so basically everything you need to know about one of your guides or one of these spiritual beings is how they feel. That is everything you need to know, is what energy are they radiating? Can they radiate a really pure love energy? Because that cannot be faked. So as long as you actually know what love energy feels like and you're not confusing it for someone who's fun or someone who's giving off sexual energy or something else, as long as you're not confusing it, love energy cannot be faked, real love energy. So if your guides are making you feel so loved and so safe, they they are good. They are good for you. Um, can't fake it. So let me see. Okay. So, yeah. So I was just kind of talking about how everything I need to know is how he feels. And yet I'm sitting here going, no, no, I need to know what constellation is your planet from? I need to know, what's this? I want to know all these technical things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, right? So he starts showing me a past lifetime. He shows me myself looking like him. So remember, he looks a little bit different than the guy I showed you. The guy I showed you had black skin with like red tips, and Talman is like a medium blue color. So where he shows me a past lifetime. This is a volcanic island. There are palm trees and sand and places where lava has cooled. You can see like lava has come down in places at some point and then cooled off and left behind like a pitch black, super hard igneous rock or whatever it's considered once it's lava and it's cooled. So Talman holds my hands and slowly leads me forward through a forest of palm trees. He squats down to where the lava meets the sand. So this is so it's hard to explain. So we go into like this shaded area because there's all these palm trees, so it's all shaded. And he squats down, and it's sandy, but there's lava that is cooled on top of the sand. And so he starts like digging down underneath that cooled lava, and he pulls out what looks like small clear crystals. So they look like quartz. And I'm kind of confused because I know that's not how quartz grows. That's how like glass can be made that way, right? Like if you really superheat up sand, I know it can make glass. And so I was like, are they glass? And he says no. Um But of course, the way things work on Earth is not necessarily the way it works on all planets. So, what he showed me is that these are, in fact, crystals. If it wasn't quartz, it was something called beryl. So, beryl is a family of gemstones that includes things like emerald, aquamarine, morganite, if it's like pink, heliodor, if it's yellow. What we were looking at was like a clear version. So clear beryl is known as goshenite. So he showed me, he like brought my awareness because in when I have visions, if I'm not paying attention to something, if I'm not tuning into something, it's very hard for me to be aware of it. So he shows me, look, you have a bracelet on. And so I had this woven bracelet that basically had these like spots where these kind of like nets were, where any kind of rock or any shaped thing could be held within these little nets. And so he showed me, look, you already have goshenite on this bracelet of yours. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then I asked him if there were colored barrels because I love aquamarine, I love emerald, I love morganite. So I was like super excited and I was like, "Oh, are there aquamarine or morganites or something like that here on this planet?" And he's like, "No." I was all disappointed. Um, so he smiled at me. Well, he doesn't smile, but his energy smiles. And so he was kind of laughing at me because he knows me. So he knows those are like my favorite gemstones. So he knows I'm like disappointed and he's kind of just like thinks I'm endearing, I guess. And so he places one of these goshenite stones, which is just like again, the strange part was that these looked polished and faceted, which is strange because normally a human being has to sit there and do that, but this is how they grew. And so he puts it in my palm, in my left palm, and he holds my hand so this is his hand, and he does this, and in between here we have like a crystal, right? And it's just on the one side. So he puts his palm on top of my palm, and the goshenite is in between. I can feel a burning sensation in my left palm. When he takes the crystal away from my palm, there's a dark marking there. So I don't know if this really makes any sense to me, but I'm just going to tell you how the vision was. So there was a dark marking here. It looked like, normally I would say it looks like a tattoo, but the word and the way it looked, the word they gave me and the way it looked was branding. Branding is like you take something really, really hot and metal, and like in the US, you would like brand. I hope they don't do it anymore, but back in the day, they used to brand animals, right? Like you had like a group of cows, and it's like, oh, these are my cows, and I'm gonna brand them with my symbol so everyone knows these are my cows. So like that's what, that's how I know branding. But it had left like a permanent marking on my palm, and I looked at his palm and he had the same marking, but it's on his right hand because that's the hand he had there. The marking has a lot of energy and radiates deep inside my hand. So I can tell this is not a marking on my, it's hard to explain. It's like, yes, this is a marking on my body, this is a marking on my flesh, but really this was a marking on the soul because I could feel it all the way through the hand. And eventually it started moving down my arm. So I know, okay, this is a energetic soul level marking being done on me. I feel the energy move up my left arm, and when I look, there are light language markings on the outside of my arm. So let's see. So if I was holding my hand like I was holding my hand like this, it's like they showed up kind of on the outside. And then so I turned to him and I'm like, because I can see it's like a bunch of little symbols, right? And I'm like, I want to know what this means, right? Um, and then I was kind of frustrated. I was like, how are you going to explain this to me? Because each one of these things is like a concept, and there's no way for you to really properly explain it. So, how am I going to, if I can't understand the language, how am I going to understand the language? And so he kind of like he merges his mind with mine, is what I said, because he did. He lines up with me to give me more understanding. And I can see on his arm, he's got these same markings, almost like they're tattooed, but again, it's almost more like a branding. And then he shows me that these are very, very typical. Like everyone in this race gets these markings done. Everyone's markings are different, but he shows me that his and mine are the same. And so I spent a lot of time trying to understand that. I was like, well, if everyone gets different markings, why did we get the same ones? Um, And then, so I was just asking, like, okay, this is like, here's the thing. So, see my tattoo? This is the only tattoo I have. It's a bow. Um, this is a matching tattoo that I have. So, me and my cousin, who's more like my sister, me and my cousin, we both have the same tattoo. And people will get matching tattoos, right, in our culture as like a show of unity. It's like a bond, it's like a relationship, it's like a marking that shows that. So I have a matching tattoo with my cousin to show unity between us. And and so I asked him, like, did we get these markings, the same ones, to like show like a relationship or whatever? And he said yes. And it feels like there's something else to that, but he didn't tell me. Let's see. So I start asking him to try to translate the concepts that are on my arm. And the first word that he said was eternity. And when he said it, I felt the word. I felt the word. So this is the difference between energy and being in the spiritual world and like being here. Here, people speak and it's like, oh, I heard it. But light language, somebody speaks it and it speaks it into life and it is, and it's a living thing and you feel it and it's entirely different. The next word he said was honor. And then he showed me something else. And I want to show you how inaccurate these translations are. So the third word, he shows me a picture. And I was like, okay, there's no words for this. So he shows me a picture. I see all these little like energy particles, right? So all these energy particles start forming and it forms into two people. And I know one of the people is me and one of the people is him, right? And then time passes, time changes, and these particles dissolve. And then our energy reforms again somewhere else in different bodies. And again, it's me and it's him. And so that's what they show me. And it's like we're a couple over and over again in different places, in different bodies. And so that's what they show me, which has such an intense energy to it, to be honest. And the word he gave me was united. United just doesn't explain what I just saw at all. At all. So this is showing you there's no way at this time for us to be trying to translate light language. I don't know if there ever will be without us. Um, I don't, yeah, I don't, I think we can understand what it means, but I don't know if we'll be able to explain to each other what it means. Maybe if we get some really good writers, really good descriptions. um, but yeah. So then he gave me a couple other words. He said treasure, he said sacred, and then it was just like, it's like, okay, these words sound really nice in English, but it's not it's not the whole of what the idea is. It's so much deeper. It's so much more complex. It's really emotional. Um and it's not, these words aren't, like I was saying, these words are not just describing something, it is creating what is said. So then treasure and sacred, these aren't like descriptive words. These actually make it so. And I know I'm like repeating myself, but it's like it's tough because there's such a big concept here that I want to share with you guys. And the English language or any human language is going to fail me right now. There's no way to describe these things, right? It's like they always say, oh, it takes like 1,000 words to describe a picture. Well, what if you're trying to describe a video over many lifetimes? How do you describe that? Like, you know? So, light language or light codes, either of them, they gave me a visual on a light code. So the light code was, the energy of it was moving and definite. It has authority and power. It has a task to complete. So the last word that Talman gave me was freely. And then at that point, I was like, you know what? You don't even need to tell me the rest of the words. I understand that I cannot understand. I know you're trying to help me because I asked you to, but this is beyond what I can grasp. So I was just like, okay, there's like a deep connection between us, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. Um, so his race knows how to use creation energy. So remember, there's volcanic energy that's associated with this race, and also they're clearly experts with light language that they chose to bring him in to speak light language to me. They they are definitely have expertise in this. So their race is very powerful, just like a god, yet the energy from him and from others that I interacted with later, it's very humble, very, very unassuming, very humble, very gentle, very safe. It's a beautiful, hypnotizing energy that makes me feel alive. This is nirvana. So then I return to the vision of the past lifetime. We have a grass hut that we live in. He shows me that these frequently catch fire. So, like, if the lava goes too close to these fire huts, of course, they like go up in flames really quickly and they're destroyed. And he's like, it's no big deal. He was showing me that destruction is seen as very natural on their planet, and they associate destruction and creation as being like hand in hand, like going together. It's like the cycle of rebirth, destruction and creation. They go together. He takes me slowly out of the shade, because remember, we were under all those palm trees. He takes me out of the shade and he takes me to the shore. The land, okay, so any of you who have been to different oceans in the world will know that when you're on the sand and you go to walk out onto the water, some places in the world, the water is very shallow for a very long time. So I noticed that, like, in Thailand, if you've ever been there, if you've ever been to any of those islands, you can like walk out for like more than a mile, and you're like, maybe the water's only to your knee. It's insane, right? There are places in the United States, like in California, where you can walk out into the water and you take maybe like 10 or 15 steps in the water and you got to start treading water because the land has dropped off and it's become deep. So it just depends on where you are in the world, how the area is set up. Um, let me see. So on this planet, the water, the land would drop off really quickly. So you only take like a few steps and it's like super deep water right away, right? And so he walks into the water with me, and as soon as the water becomes deep, he just goes like face down into the water. And I was like, and I'm going with him, but part of me is like, is this okay? Like, I didn't even see him take a deep breath or anything before he went into the water. I was like, that's weird. And so I learned that this race can exist underwater for a much longer time than a human. So he gives me the impression that there's something about like oxygen stored in our cells that is somehow being like diverted to wherever it needs to go, is kind of what I'm feeling. So it's not like our lungs. I don't even know if we have lungs, but we're not set up like a human. That race is not set up like a human. So he was showing me that they can spend about 25 minutes under the water, no problem. Like no one's gonna die. You can just hang out for 25 minutes under the water, and then you probably need to come up and take a breath or whatever. Um, and so we go into the water, and there are formations under the water. So there are places where there are cracks in the sea floor that have allowed lava to like leak up, and the lava has cooled, and because it's been like leaking up, it's almost like these little balls of lava all connected to each other, making these like formations under the water. And so there's these really bright colored fish that are like swimming in between these, and there are like invertebrates and other sea life that are using the lava almost like a coral reef. So so Talman, he was really happy because I was like, I sat down and I was like, oh, look at the fish. Cause I'm like, I don't know, I'm kind of a geek. I really like fish. I really like colorful fish. I love aquariums. I don't know. So I was just sitting there and I was like, oh, you could just watch the fish. This is awesome. And he's giving off this smiling energy because he knows that. And he knows that I would have done that in past lifetimes. That would have been like the fun thing for me to do. I'm gonna go watch the fish for a little bit. Go under the water, just watch the fish swim by. Um, this is a relaxing place for me. There are large, bright yellow fish that are very friendly. And so they were probably about this big. That's a big fish, right? I don't know. It was a big fish for being that brightly colored. Here, I feel like all the brightly colored fish are like this big on Earth. I don't know. I know it's not true, but anyways, it was like this big. He's yellow, and they're kind of like dogs. They were super friendly and curious, and they would just kind of swim up. And you know how fish do that thing where they're like they make an O with their mouth and like oh, they were like doing that, but they would come up and like do that to your skin, like they were trying to like see if there was something edible on your skin that they could eat off of you. And so they would come over and they'd check me out, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you don't have any food, okay." And then so they'd move on. Um, really gentle fish though. So I'm like sitting and I'm looking, and there were schools of fish that were like rainbow colored but metallic at the same time. And so it was just like green and blue and purple and all these colors reflecting off of the fish. It was really interesting. Let's see. Oh, and then so that yellowfish that came over to me that was like mouthing my arm. So he like was swimming away, and then he saw like a female that he liked. And so he changed his coloring, kind of like the way like a chameleon can change their coloring, or like an octopus can change their coloring. So instead of being a solid yellow, he changes to black. He's like totally black, but he's got these really big white spots that are close together on him. And so he looks completely different. And so that's his way of letting her know that he's interested in her. So I was like, this is crazy. Um, so then Talman, he walks me deeper into the ocean. And if you spend a lot of time underwater, you know it's super hard to like walk underwater on like the floor of a pool or of anything. Um, at least for me, like I feel like humans just kind of naturally want to float to the top, but it's almost like the bodies were denser or heavier or something because we were just weighted down. We were able to just kind of walk along the floor. Um, there are many schools of fish here. And then I was asking him because I was like, I was being a little human scaredy cat. I was like, oh dang, you shouldn't walk deep into the Earth Ocean because that's where like the sharks and stuff are. So I started asking him. I was like, "Do you guys have sharks?" And he's like, "No." I was like, "Seals?" No. And I was like, otters?" Because I love otters. And he's like, "No." Um, and then so he bends down and he like scoops up a clam. And so I was like, "Okay, that's cool." And he puts the clam on his palm, and I can see he's sending out loving energy to this clam. And so that convinces the clam to open up because the clam's like, oh, it's safe. So the clam opens up and he like pops a little pearl out of this clam's mouth. And it's like a lavender colored pearl. And then he puts the clam back on the sand floor or back on the ocean floor. And he takes the pearl and he adds it to this bracelet that I told you about that has like these nets. So he pops it into one of these nets so it's secure because it's like stretchy and woven. And then he shows me albino dolphins. So they weren't just white, like their eyes were white. They were like albino dolphins. Um, and the dolphins seemed small, but it's because we are huge. I think the dolphins there are the same size basically as the dolphins on Earth. It's just that we were in 8 foot tall bodies, whereas I'm only 5 foot tall in this human body. So it's a big difference for me. So then we're kind of done with the ocean at that point, and he takes me to the surface and we're treading water. And we're not very far from the shore because the water got so deep so quick that we didn't really go very far. Um, but then I'm gonna like head back to the shore, but then something is coming up under the water and it keeps coming up, 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 and it's something flat, right? Really big and really flat from beneath us. And it's dark gray and it's large enough that it ends up lifting up both of our bodies completely out of the water. And so we're basically like riding on the back of some kind of animal, right? It's like a bit rubbery, it's like dark gray. Um, when it comes up, there's this hole on the top of it that goes like exhales air and it kind of blows a little water out. And I was like, oh, it's a blowhole, it's a whale, because that's what whales do on Earth. And so it's like it was a whale that was kind of shaped more like a manta ray. So it was like flat, but it was massive, massive because it was a whale. Um, it moves us the short distance back to the shoreline. It is a filter feeder with eyes on the side of its flat body. And so I'm kind so he kind of takes us over to the shore and I kind of rub him and he's kind of like rubbery and I'm like, okay. And then I felt weird because I was like, okay, I gotta like walk across your head now to like get off of you. So I felt bad, but it's the only way to get off of him. Um, and then back on the shore, there were others of our same race. And so this is where I started noticing there were different colors. So I was blue, Talman's blue. I see other blue adults. I start seeing adults that are black with the red tips. And then I also saw um like little, I don't want to say little kids. I saw like maybe like teenagers or older children who looked more like white-ish or light blue. And so Talman was showing me that the color of the skin changes as we age. He was like, okay, it's lighter, it goes blue. When you're more elderly, it turns black with the red tips. And so that was interesting because the beings that were black with the red tips, they were very, very capable. You think of like, oh, people who are super, extremely old, a lot of times they have like physical limitations because of their age. Things aren't working as well with their bodies or maybe even their minds. Um, but there was like no difference with these beings at all because if you think about it, yeah, that actually makes sense. All of the um, all of the ways our body runs down or our mind runs down in this lifetime on Earth, it's tied into trauma and it's tied into lower vibrational energies. When you're on like a 7D planet, which is where we were, you don't, your body doesn't fall apart and then you die. You just, when you're on a 7D planet, you actually quote unquote die when you just choose to exit your body and you don't return to it. It's a whole nother story. But at any rate, so let me see. I keep losing my place because I'm talking to you guys, and then when I go back to my notes, I'm in a totally different spot. Here we go. The elderly do not seem feeble. They do not have reduced mobility or reduced cognitive function. Instead, it is clear that the ones who are black with the red tips have more knowledge. Like it was obvious. It was like, oh, you have better energy than than the younger ones. Got more knowledge. Um, And then it was interesting because the older child or like teenager that I saw, their energy was more like a blank slate. It was like, oh, you haven't done anything yet. It was almost like you could just sense the wisdom level in each of these beings, which is interesting. And then I realized that they are androgynous. So they are all both male and female. There's nothing physically that was distinguished. Well, that's interesting because their chests all looked male as far as Earth is concerned. Um, but they all have male and I don't know how this works and they didn't show it to me, but they all basically have male and female body parts or reproductive parts is probably what I should say. So I end up pulling out of this vision because of whatever's going on in my real life. And later that night, my lower back was like hurting a little. I was like, "Oh, that's strange," because that doesn't normally happen. And so the guide that I use for healing is Kwamya, who I've talked to you guys about before. He's like, I laugh at him because he's got like blue skin and he's got like this giant head. And the first time I saw him, he was wearing a blue cape that was like the same color of his skin. I was laughing at him. He's from Nakar, which is Nakar is like right next door to Arcturus. Bootes. There we go. The Bootes constellation. Anyways, so I always call Kwamya to help me for physical stuff. So I called Kwamya and Kwamya didn't come. Instead, I saw the same race as Talman, but it was a black skin with the red tips. And so he's standing there over me, and I'm like, Talman, is that you? And it's like, no. And I was so confused. I'm like, Talman, is that you though? He's like, no. And I asked him like 4 times because I was like, who is this? Um, and then, so here's the interesting thing. Couple months ago, I don't even know when it was, but a couple months ago, all of a sudden I was getting this vision of this being. I was getting this vision of this being that was had black, black, black skin, the red tips on those tentacle things, the slit in the face for the nose. And when I saw it, I got scared. And so I moved the vision away. I didn't want to tune into it because I was like, is this some kind of bad guy? Because our human minds are ridiculous and biased. And I was like, well, my human mind is like, well, he had super black skin. So, you know, maybe he's a demon or something. And not that I thought he was a demon, but I thought maybe he was a galactic that wasn't in my best interests. And so instead of asking questions like I should have done to Metatron, I just shooed away the vision and was like, I need to go to bed. I'm not gonna tune into this right now. Um, so now this guide had come back, and I was like, well, this is interesting. Um, let's see. So I asked this being, I was like, so are you my guide? And he says, yes. And I ask him if he will heal my back, and he says, yes. And I could feel his energy really clearly. And I know I must know him a whole lot because I didn't even have to question Metatron who this guy was. Like, as soon as I let him just stand near me, um, I was like, this guy's okay. And then so I was asking him questions. I was like, so are you older and wiser than Talman? Because remember I told you the ones with the black skin are older and they have more knowledge. And so I was like, so are you older and wiser than Talman? And he says yes, but he's like laughing at me, like in a nice way. Like he finds me amusing. He's good natured. And then I asked him what his name was, and he said Sylon. Um, and then and then he was just like working on my body, and I could feel it, the pain going away, and I was feeling better. And he wasn't talking to me, he was just working. So I was like, so you just came to work? And he said yes. And then at that point I actually just fell asleep. So um I don't have any more conversation with him, but I like him. I'll be talking to him again at some point for sure. But anyways, the whole point of this video is really just kind of telling you what I know about this new planet, Udon, describing these beings. So if you come across one of these beings, you are probably going to be super safe with them because they're seventh dimensional beings. I know, is it? Let me just ask. Okay, yeah. Sometimes there are galactic beings that are from like 5D that end up um deciding to like work for the darkness. Like, unfortunately, I've come across like um Lyran cats and like the feline like race from Lyra. And I've also come across like mantids, unfortunately, that were like not in my best interest. But that's like the exception for sure. But when you have a 7D being, it's is it possible? He's like, yeah. He's like, it's possible. He's like, but it's not very likely. Most likely, if you see one of these beings or come across one of them, they're good. But you should learn to feel energy in order to know for sure, really. But okay, so that's everything I have for you guys. What I actually want to do, well, like an hour into this video, sorry, I want to give away the last two activations that Susan and I need to give away as part of one of our very generous clients who donated a large amount, and we've given away lots of sessions from that client, and these are the last two. And so we're going to be giving away a Isis activation and a Metatron activation. So Isis, she's an Egyptian goddess of magic and healing. Those are probably the two big things that she's a goddess over. So, an incredibly powerful energy to work with, incredibly transformative energy to work with. So, we want to give away one of her activations. We also want to give away a Metatron activation, which Archangel Metatron is, my personal opinion, the absolute best guide, hands down, that you could have, that you could work with. Um, he's always He's always moving you towards what is best for you. He always has your highest interests in mind. He will never put you in a compromising situation or lie to you or do anything like that. Um, he's very powerful to work with because he's gonna line you up with things that are for your greatest and highest good. So when Susan and I first met, one of the very first things we did was do a Metatron activation. And that was a game changer for us. That's what opened up all of our gifts because we started communicating with Metatron and he started teaching us how to do things, and it was the game changer for us. So we're going to give away one of each of those. If you are interested in either one of those, then indicate in the comments. Please don't say you want both. Please consider which one feels right or best to you, and then indicate that one. And in a few days, we'll have Metatron pick the winners and we'll let you guys know. Okay, that's everything that I have for you guys. I will see you next time. Bye bye.